I think that poetic languages, when they are well done, it's harder to write in a poetic language than in a formal language, because the criteria for when it's good are harder to capture. The quality of the poetic language depends on the depth of your understanding of the domain, and you basically use additional modalities in the language to project your observation onto. And the difficulty with the poetic language is that it might induce a trance state in which you are no longer able to understand what it's doing to you. So, for instance, it might induce an emotion that you consider to be correlated to understanding. And it's when you consume poetry, it's sometimes hard to understand whether the poetry that you are consuming is true or beautiful. And there is a big danger in poetry that is merely beautiful and not true. And beautiful poetry is inducing nice emotions, and true poetry is observing in a very elegant way. And the goal of poetry is basically to have this multimodal elegance, to use all parts of your available language to capture a certain observation as well as you can. So I think that poetic languages make sense, but there are two modes in some sense of making sense of reality. And I recently dug out Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance as a metaphor. Robert Pirsig describes the difference between what he calls a classic and a romantic mind. And the classic mind is the one that he perceives himself to be, a person who understands the motorbike that he is riding on as an arrangement of parts that have to function in a particular way. And if that thing makes a particular noise, there's a very particular reason and you can fix it. And then he has friends who are smart, well-educated and everything. And for them, the motorbike is a very amorphous thing that they ride on. And when this makes weird noises, you have to go on until the verses get even more weird. And then it has to go into the shop. But there is no way to understand what this, how this operates. And there is a collection of images that somebody can Google it easily, has collected of people drawing bicycles. And it's quite hilarious, right? The way that a lot of people are trying to reconstruct the shape of a bicycle. And it's largely not functional, right? How is it possible that minds represent the bicycle in this way? And is this actually the difference between romantic way of thinking and romantic language, of poetic languages and analytic languages, where the analytic language captures the structure and elegance and functionality of the bicycle, and the other one is just an arrangement of features that is sufficient to remember that you had this object, right? So I wonder if this poetic language is largely indexical rather than analytic. And this difference between indexicality and analysis means that the analysis has to reconstruct the functional properties of the thing that you're describing. So it's recovered that if you were carrying this analytic observation into a different universe, you can build this object there. Versus the indexical thing requires the presence of this object in some context that is can be resolved by just pointing at it in the right way. So it's sufficiently disambiguated. And if you want to build a machine learning system in this way, you would have one that is smart and tries to make a simulation of the universe. And then in the simulation, it identifies what it needs to simulate to produce a certain object, a certain thing in the universe. And the other one is just arranging the features, like a neural network that is arranging blobs of patterns in the right way. And right way just means bind them together. And if you cannot discern the objects from others, you improve the discrimination by increasing the resolution of those features, right? So the poetic language goes into the textures, it goes into the colors, but it doesn't really look at the functional arrangement of the parts.
It should, but it doesn't.
Yes, so it's often a way out. And I find that many of these romantic thinkers are drawn to anti-analytic arguments. And this is a big red flag to me. If somebody thinks that Gödel's proof has somehow shown that mathematics is impotent at describing reality, and therefore a person who doesn't understand reality, doesn't understand mathematics is better equipped to describe reality, right? That is very suspicious.